It's the mid-1990s. On every newsstand, her face reigns supreme. Porcelain skin, piercing blue eyes, and cheekbones sculpted like marble. Amber Valletta is everywhere. Calvin Klein's minimalist muse, Versace's glamorous siren, Prada's cool enigma. To the world, she is perfection itself. But perfection has its price. Away from the spotlight, Amber is not the untouchable goddess the world worships. She is a young woman, a mother, a lover, quietly living two lives, one in dazzling couture, the other in shadows she dares not reveal. How did the girl from Oklahoma rise to define an era of beauty? How did she balance fame, family, and a hidden battle that threatened to consume it all? This is the untold story of Amber Valletta, the supermodel who lived two lives. Amber Valletta was born in Tucson, Arizona, and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, far from the runways of Paris or the cameras of Hollywood. Raised by a hard-working single mother, her early life was marked not by glamour, but by resilience. She was a quiet, observant child, the kind who blended into the background, unaware that her striking features would one day command the world's attention. Her mother, seeing a spark of potential in her tall, willowy daughter, enrolled Amber in a local modeling school. At just 15, Amber stood nervously in front of scouts, unaware that her life was about to change. In that modest room in Tulsa, someone saw what she could not yet see, the makings of an international star. Soon after, she signed with the modeling agency, trading the quiet streets of Oklahoma for the restless energy of New York City. The leap was dizzying. One day, she was an ordinary teenager helping her mother with chores. The next, she was walking into casting rooms filled with legends of fashion. For Amber, it was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had no blueprint, no famous family name to guide her, only determination, humility, and a face that seemed destined for history. Her childhood instilled in her a certain grounding, a sense of balance she would cling to when the world around her became overwhelming. But that grounding would also be tested in ways no young girl from Tulsa could have imagined. By the early 1990s, Amber Valletta had ascended to a realm few could ever dream of. At just 18, she appeared on the cover of Italian Vogue, a single image that launched her into the stratosphere of fashion. From that point on, the industry could not look away. In an era where Naomi Campbell's power, Linda Evangelista's chameleon spirit, and Kate Moss's fragility defined archetypes, Amber carved out her own niche. The serene, sculpted beauty whose elegance seemed both timeless and contemporary. Her face soon dominated the decade. She appeared on more than 14 Vogue covers worldwide, each a statement of her staying power. Calvin Klein cast her as the emblem of minimalist cool. Prada wrapped her in stark sophistication. Giorgio Armani highlighted her sleek allure. Versace unleashed her on the runway in dazzling gowns, where she stood as a vision of opulence. What set Amber apart was her ability to shapeshift. She could embody Helmut Lang's austere minimalism one moment, then transform into Versace's extravagance the next. Editors called her a chameleon. Photographers described her face as a perfect canvas, and designers agreed. Amber could be anything they needed her to be. But unlike some of her contemporaries, Amber's life off the runway carried a quieter, more personal story. In the mid-90s, she found love with French model Hervé Labihan, a romance that intrigued the fashion world for its striking symmetry. Two impossibly beautiful figures side by side, both in editorials and in life. Their relationship brought stability amidst the chaos. And in 2000, Amber gave birth to their son, Auden. Becoming a mother transformed her world. Amid endless flights and glittering parties, she found solace in holding her child, cherishing moments that no flashbulb could capture. Her friendships within the supermodel circle also shaped her rise. Known for her kindness and head-levelness, Amber often bridged personalities in an industry fueled by egos. While others thrived on spectacle, she was admired for her professionalism and her warmth. Behind the camera, she was the confidant, the listener, the friend who grounded the whirlwind of fame. Hollywood soon came calling. Amber began to transition into film, landing roles that showcased her ability to move beyond mere beauty. In Hitch, 2005, opposite Will Smith, and Transporter 2, she proved she could hold her own on screen. Unlike many models whose foray into acting felt forced, Amber's presence was credible, natural, and surprisingly versatile. By the mid to late 1990s, Amber Valletta stood at a rare intersection. Adored by designers, celebrated on magazine covers, admired in Hollywood, and cherished in her personal life as a partner and mother. She seemed to embody perfection. Beauty, fame, love, and family all wrapped into one extraordinary life. But perfection often hides its deepest cracks. Behind the glow of flashbulbs and the applause of runways, Amber was already carrying a secret that threatened to unravel everything she had built. On the surface, Amber Valletta seemed untouchable. The magazines still featured her, campaigns still called, and red carpets still welcomed her. But behind that flawless exterior, her carefully constructed world was quietly crumbling. Amber had first experimented with drugs as a teenager, years before fame swept her away. What began as youthful curiosity hardened into dependency, and the pressures of the fashion industry only magnified it. Endless flights, sleepless nights, the expectation to look flawless every hour of the day. Her world was a carousel spinning too fast to step off. The intoxicating mix of success and exhaustion pushed her deeper into old habits. She later admitted candidly, "I had a multi-million-dollar career, and I was an addict." It was a devastating truth hidden beneath couture gowns and glossy covers. The fall was not sudden, but gradual, like a candle slowly burning out. On the outside, she smiled for photographers, posed for Prada, walked for Versace. On the inside, she felt the weight of a double life. Every shoot, every runway, every interview became a performance not just of beauty, but of survival. The anxiety of being discovered gnawed at her, making the glamorous world feel like a gilded prison. Her personal life, once a source of stability, began to fracture under the strain. Her relationship with Hervé Le Bien, the father of her son, faltered. The demands of two modeling careers, the constant distance, and Amber's silent battle created a rift that love alone could not mend. Their split was painful, leaving Amber to navigate motherhood as both a source of joy and a constant reminder of the balance she struggled to keep. Auden was her anchor, the reason she kept fighting, but he was also the mirror that forced her to confront the truth she had long tried to bury. Even friendships within the fashion industry, once a lifeline, could not fully shield her. Some peers whispered about her fragility. Others, facing their own demons, could only offer fleeting support. The fashion industry, so quick to crown its queens, was just as quick to move on when they faltered. Opportunities slipped through her fingers, projects stalled, calls grew fewer. The golden girl of the 90s was suddenly facing the harsh reality of an industry that had little patience for imperfection. Amber's fall was not a tabloid scandal splashed across headlines, but a quieter, lonelier unraveling. Alone in hotel rooms, she wrestled with shame and fear. She despised the reflection staring back at her in the mirror, an image that had once made her famous, now distorted by secrets. And yet, even in her darkest moments, there remained a fragile thread of hope. The love for her son kept her tethered to life, whispering that redemption was still possible. But to reach it, Amber would have to do the unthinkable for a supermodel, strip away the facade of perfection and reveal her truth to the world. Amber Valletta's path to redemption was not a sudden breakthrough, but a gradual, courageous unfolding. For years, she carried her secret in silence, terrified that exposing her struggles would shatter the carefully built image of perfection. But there came a point when the mask became too heavy to bear. With her son Auden growing older, Amber realized she could no longer live a double life. She wanted him to see not a flawless facade, but a mother who could stand in her truth. When Amber finally spoke publicly about her battle with addiction, it was a seismic moment in fashion. Here was one of the great faces of the 90s, openly dismantling the myth of superhuman beauty. In interviews, she admitted, "I started using drugs and alcohol at 15. I had a multi-million-dollar career and I was an addict." The honesty was jarring, yet profoundly human. Instead of ruining her, her confession liberated her. For the first time, Amber was no longer trapped by the image on magazine covers. She was simply herself. Her redemption was not only about recovery, but about redefinition. She returned to fashion, walking runways for designers like Balenciaga and Maison Margiela, not as the untouched goddess of the 90s, but as a woman who had endured and survived. Each step down the runway carried new weight, new meaning. She was no longer performing perfection, she was embodying resilience. Amber also extended her story beyond the catwalk. She used her platform to advocate for honesty in fashion, for mental health awareness, and for environmental sustainability. In community events and public talks, she revealed the power of vulnerability, turning what had once been her shame into a beacon for others. To young models entering the industry, she became both a warning and an inspiration, proof that it is possible to stumble, to fall, and to rise again stronger than before. Most of all, Amber's redemption was deeply personal. She had reclaimed her life not only for herself, but for her son. The same industry that once devoured her youth could no longer define her worth. In its place stood a woman who had learned that beauty is not measured by flawlessness, but by the courage to embrace imperfection and live truthfully in the light. Amber Valletta's legacy is woven from more than silk gowns and magazine covers. She belongs to the pantheon of 90s supermodels, but her true impact lies in the way she redefined what beauty, fame, and strength could mean. For decades, fashion celebrated the untouchable goddess, flawless, silent, and distant. Amber shattered that mold by daring to be vulnerable. To the industry, she left behind an indelible image. Those unforgettable campaigns with Calvin Klein, Prada, and Versace, where her gaze seemed both icy and inviting. She stood among the titans of her era, yet she never lost her quiet humanity. But her greatest legacy may be what came after the lights dimmed: the courage to tell her truth. By speaking openly about addiction, motherhood, and survival, she gave permission for others, models and fans alike, to embrace imperfection without shame. Amber also carved a place in culture as an actress, bridging two worlds that rarely overlap. Her roles in Hollywood added another dimension to her story, proof that reinvention was possible beyond the runway. And through her advocacy, whether for environmental causes or mental health awareness, she showed that a supermodel's voice could carry weight beyond aesthetics. For her son and for the next generation of models, Amber represents a different kind of icon. Not the untouchable fantasy, but the real woman who stumbled, fell, and found the strength to rise again. In an age still obsessed with curated perfection, her legacy reminds us that true beauty is not about never breaking. It's about how you piece yourself back together. She will forever be remembered as more than just a face of the 90s. Amber Valletta is the supermodel who lived two lives and chose to share both.